and welcome to a very strange episode of the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove. I'm in the passenger seat in Taylor's car on 95 South. Behind the wheel.
Oh boy.
It's Taylor Rockwell.
Hello! Behind the wheel indeed. Let's hope we make it home.
So we are coming back from Audi Field, where we've just seen the United States beat Cuba 7-0 in the CONCACAF Nations League. And we've decided to record in the car.
Basically, we stayed after for the press conferences for the mixed zone. It was a little bit late. I think Daryl floated the idea of, hey, you just want to do this on the way home, as opposed to spending an hour recording and then being like, well, now we have a fun 2.5-hour drive ahead of us. Instead,
also,
here we are.
It's a weird game, right? Because Cuba were, with all due respect, low-quality opposition. Yes. There's a whole caveat with everything positive that you take away from this game from the US.
Yes.
There's the caveat that it was Cuba and they weren't very good. So we thought we'd do something a little different, right? So first of all, we'll do it in a car, which is weird. A mobile studio.
Is
it more professional to call it a mobile studio?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, let's call it that.
I mean, there shouldn't be too many echoes, so that's good. And then I think this should be our new tradition, that anytime the United States wins 7-0, into the car we go.
We just get on 95. So far, no traffic, by the way.
Yeah, that's
looking
good.
We're looking good. We're also we're going to review the game. We're not going to review every goal, like goal by goal, 7 goals.
Yeah, no.
I mean, the first 2 are identical. So, we're taking questions from Twitter. So we put the call out. So far, we have 46 questions.
Yeah, right.
So we may skip over some of them.
We'll see.
We may skip over some of the repeats.
We got a ways to go.
We sure do. Anything you want to say before we get to the questions?
We are at local exit for Triangle and Quantico, Virginia. I'm looking for a mile marker to track how long this episode goes.
Anything about the game?
Mile marker 153. About the game, it was... I felt positive. I had a couple people point out on Twitter and Instagram that my pushing all of my chips into the middle on this better be a good game seemed to pay off, because a 7-0 win is that. I take your caveat to heart that it's still Cuba. It's not that great of an opponent.
Here's what the positive I take from it. It's a 7-0 win where there was almost like a demonstration of what, especially in the first 30 minutes, especially the first half, of what, when Greg Berhalter closes his eyes at night and has a beautiful dream about what his US team is supposed to look like, this is what it's supposed to look like, right? There's the positional play, like everybody performed their role. You could see like players dragging Cuban defenders out of position so that other players could run into the gaps. Like, I know it's only Cuba, but at least now we have a demonstration for people who are maybe curious or who didn't understand of what Berhalter wants to see. He just wants to see this, but against good teams.
Yeah, and I mean, and I think a point made by several different players that Brad Guzan said it a couple times is essentially that, like, you can't pick your opponent. You got to play who's in front of you, even if
unless you bribe CONCACAF.
Well, in which case maybe that works out for you. But in this case, you know you're playing a weaker opponent, but that doesn't mean you can slack off. If anything, it means that it's the opportunity to really go at them, work on the things you've worked on, implement the things you've worked on, and hopefully have them succeed as a sign of, like, see, we're working on it, we're getting better, it's improving, now let's see if we can do it against significantly stronger opposition in the form of Canada.
Yep, and I think, that game against Canada on Tuesday is kind of the big test. Obviously, they're the other good team in our group. Yeah. Right? Plus, it's just a tougher opponent.
I think they're of the 3, I would say it's us and them, for sure. Yeah.
All right, so, you want to start with the questions?
Let's do it.
Okay, first question comes from South by Southwick, who asks, does this scoreline equal a success for Darryl? So if you remember, I was concerned that Canada had beaten Cuba 6-0 and then 1-0, so an average, like a total of 7. So we needed to win at least 3.5-0. 7-0, yes, obviously success.
And Matt
double success.
Matt Miazga agrees with you, by the way. He noted they were very aware of goal difference and how many Canada had hung on Cuba.
I feel like you didn't take me seriously when I talked about goal difference in that preview.
I mean, I am still less concerned about it. I would rather just beat Canada. But still, all that said, yes, I think you were the only one who wanted to make sure that...
Did you say blame Canada or beat Canada?
Sure, either one. Either one.
Okay, next question?
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I do want to say, I scrolled through these questions really quickly before we started recording. Sometimes I get frustrated with US men's national team Twitter, a lot of negativity and stuff like that. These questions are magnificent. They're mostly like Total Soccer Show listeners that we know and love, asking really good questions.
All right, I hope that means that they're actually good and not just questions Daryl likes and I hate. We'll find out.
No, I'm going through all of them and asking everything I can find. Okay, Donald Norman. Donald Norman asks, or says, it was clear there were rehearsed / understood combinations and overlaps. For example, on the first 2 goals, Reggie Cannon made the hockey assist pass to Morris, I believe both times, without having to look to see if the play was on. Why should I care who that was against?
I'm not sure you should. I mean, because again, like, you can say, well, I'm excited about that. It looked good. Let's see how it goes against Canada. But I take David's point, which is that, like, this is like the United States executing a game plan. We heard in the lead up to one of the goals, it was like a very short period of time between goal and goal and goal and goal in the opening minutes, that this is a thing that they had rehearsed, they had watched footage of this morning. Were some of these like quick passes, these quick transitions, Reggie Cannon playing and Jordan Morris looking for the ball into the middle, are all things that we've seen them like essentially practice, work through, and attempt to execute, and in this game they did. So I think, maybe against a stronger opponent it's harder. Maybe they track Jordan Morris a little bit better. Maybe there's a little bit more pressure on Jackson Ewell or Reggie Cannon when they're playing the balls, but there wasn't tonight, and so these players made of it what they could, which was 7 goals.
And I would argue that players made it happen. In terms of, if you watch, I think on both of the first 2 goals, definitely on the second one, Jordan Morris both times tricks the fullback. Right?
Yes.
He starts making a run in one direction, and the fullback starts to go with him, and then Morris changes direction, runs in behind at pace, so that the defender's in the wrong position and can't catch him up. Reggie Cannon knows what Jordan Morris is doing, so when you've got like an element of surprise on the fullback, the pace of Morris in behind, and Reggie Cannon knowing what was coming when the fullback didn't, that's magnificent teamwork. That's a team that's all on the same page. And again, that's going to be harder against a better team, but at least you can see the elements of it there, right? And then, definitely for both goals, when Morris gets in and squares it, there's Weston McKennie making the late arriving run, right? If you, we obviously could see the whole field. On TV, they did the tactical cam view for both goals. You see McKennie start really deep, like almost level with Jackson Ewell, and then sprints to be arriving at that back post so that he's there to be on the end of the cross, right?
Yes. And these are...
It's all synchronized.
It is. But these are all synchronizations that I think we will continue to see from the U.S. regardless of the opponent. I mean, maybe not if they're going up against like Brazil or Germany, but generally speaking, we'll see some of these.
That's the dream, right? For it to work against Thiago Silva.
True. Yeah. I think, and then you've made it. But I would also say that I think we also saw things in this game that were designed for Cuba, an inferior opponent. Because at one point, we saw Reggie Cannon early in the game. We were commenting on how Reggie Cannon gets forward really early, and then it was sort of like, okay, so maybe they're going to that back 3, and it's Lovitz sliding in, and that's the third.
And it was for a while, right? There were 3 centre backs with Lovitz staying in the left centre.
Sometimes, but then we also saw Lovitz go forward in moments, and to me,
I like the flexibility.
Yeah, but to me that signified that, like, look, we're playing a weaker opponent. They're going to try to hit us on the break via direct long balls. We back Tim Ream and Matt Miazga to win those and deal with them capably. So no, we'll commit numbers forward. And I think that's another reason why the United States had so much time and space, is because they had so many bodies committed into that attacking third. And
I find that slightly encouraging in that it's not too rigid. Right? It's not like Lovitz stay back as left centre back even when there's no threat from Cuba.
Exactly.
Like, you may as well go join the attack. Right? You may as well add extra numbers to the attack.
Yes.
We said in our preview, Cuba not great at the counter-attacking.
No, and really even less effective here, because it's almost as though I'm not trying to say like they actually listen to us, but it was like one thing we talked about was like they go direct, and that's not always as successful at direct long.
Cuba,
and then and then when they try to play like direct counterattack vertically with some passes, they tend to like give the ball away fairly easily. And it felt like in this game they were just like, don't even try that, don't get caught in possession, just go long every single time. But it was never with a, like, you know how like Jamie Vardy for Leicester will like start on the touchline and then make that sort of like lateral run across to cause problems. There was never any of that. It was just like hoof it long for the other for one attacker.
There's no Cuban Jamie Vardy.
Exactly. And so really then it came down to aerial battles, and Tim Ream and Matt Miazga were more than capable. But again,
Matt Miazga loomed large over both Cuban forwards.
Like literally and figuratively at one point with like the complete lean over to win a header over a guy who was trying to back into him. But all of those to me are signs that the United States sort of took the things that they've been working on that they really wanted to implement and used them, but then also changed a few things to really deal with what their opponent was throwing at them, and I think they executed both of those things perfectly.
For those keeping track, we just passed exit 143A, mile marker 143.4.
There we go.
All right, John Adams, not that one. Did Sargent do the things GGG is asking of him off the ball, and will he feature against Canada?
Daryl, you want to take that one since you asked Greg Berhalter that very same question?
I asked in the press conference. I asked Berhalter, could you please describe some of the specific positioning things that you want from a striker in your system, and how did Josh Sargent do it that tonight? How quickly is he learning those things? And Berhalter did that thing where he kind of sounded like he answered the question, but sort of dodged it because he didn't want to reveal any of the specific positioning things. And then he started talking about how with Josh Sargent it's more about his movement in the box, right? Which you can also interpret as like that Berhalter sees that as Sargent's strength, like the fox in the box type element, right? Which we've seen plenty for Bremen. Saw a little bit tonight with Josh Sargent's goal.
Yeah, we didn't see as much of it though, and that's where I don't know if what Berhalter was trying to say was like, that's what we want to see him do, but it's not what we were trying to do tonight, or that's where we think his strengths are. Because there were moments, I would say, like at the end of the first half and then even into the second half, knowing that Josh Sargent scores, there were still moments when you and I were sort of having difficulty figuring out what was he trying to do, because it was a lot of splitting the difference between the two center backs or dropping in a little bit, but it wasn't a lot of
deep.
But it wasn't a lot of like sprinting like laterally to the touchline to open up space or to be on the end of like a long ball over the top. And I don't think that was what was asked of him. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying like he was told run around and he just didn't do it. But how sort of stationary is the wrong word, because it's not like he was just standing there waiting for the ball.
I think central is the word.
Exactly.
It's almost like he ploughed a furrow from the middle of the field, like next to the centre backs, to the middle of the field, just next to Cuba's defensive midfielders. And I actually think that is an instruction, because what you would see a lot of is Sargent would come a little deeper, and then say Jordan Morris and Weston McKennie or Christian Pulisic would then be running in behind. And I think part of the synchronization that they're going for is Sargent confuses the centre-backs or drags someone out, and another player runs in behind.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
that
I
makes
think
sense.
it's almost like, we talked about this a little bit while we were watching, right? It's almost like a false nine, some of it, and it's almost like as a striker you're sacrificial almost, in that you're making a sacrifice to create the space for someone else to run in behind.
Yeah, and I would say with him creating the space, like a couple of things I noticed were, if say Tim Ream has the ball for the United States in their half, in the US's half, we would sometimes see Jackson Ewell drop in a little bit, because the Cuban, like the front two in their 4-4-2 defensively, left space for Jackson Ewell to move in and be available for that central pass. And what I saw a few different times was when Jackson Ewell would drop in, Josh Sargent would move like that corresponding distance. And so I think he was focused on...
So that's an instruction for sure, right? If you see it repeated, then for sure.
Yeah, because he's not trying to just like stretch them and hope for a long ball over the top, especially with Cuba's mid-block. I don't think that was going to be as successful. But dropping in and staying closer to the ball and staying closer to possible options not only helps with you being on the ball and being aware of what's going on, but also against Cuba on multiple occasions, Sargent would drop in, would get the ball, and would try to play quickly laterally to open up play, or would just drop back in, and that would pull a center back out, and that left space for Jordan Morris. So it seemed like he was doing a very good job of pulling people around to create opportunities for his teammates.
And maybe the best example is the Jordan Morris goal, where I think Ewell plays it into Sargent, who then flicks it on to McKennie, who plays in Jordan Morris.
There we go.
Right? So, but to answer John's question, because Greg Berhalter wouldn't answer the question when I asked it, do we think Sargent did enough of the off-the-ball things that Berhalter asked him to do?
I mean, I would assume so, because he plays the whole game. Now, that might be because Berhalter's already going to play Zardes, but it is worth noting Sargent took a knock in the first half, played through it, played the entire second half, and I would assume that means that he did at least enough of what Berhalter asked of him to warrant continued consideration and selection. That said, there were moments in which, I don't know if Berhalter's going to care about this, but for me, I definitely had some spots where I thought, like, if that were Zardes, we would be livid, or at least a lot of soccer Twitter would be livid. There's the one where Sargent, I think, to his credit, I think he wins the ball to create a breakaway attempt for himself, and he
right towards the end, right?
He skies that shot into the supporters section behind the goal. And if that's Gyasi Zardes who does that hard work to win that ball back, drives at the goalkeeper, and then shoots it over, that feels like a very familiar pattern.
Classic Gyasi.
Yep.
Susanna Collins would be saying.
Yeah. And so, exactly. So, I think, for me at least, I won't speak for Greg Berhalter, because, we're not that close. We're kind of close, but not that close. But I would say that I saw moments from Josh Sargent that made me very excited, but I also saw moments that reminded me he is very young and still has a long way to go, and I think we're seeing aspects of why he isn't an automatic starter yet for the U.S.
And I saw him get bodied off the ball more than once, right? Like occasionally he would win a free kick, but because Cuba had some like big centre backs, and there were times when he would receive the ball back to goal and just get knocked over, and it wasn't a free kick; he'd just lost the ball. So, in terms of will he feature against Canada, I don't have an answer to that. I think it'll be fascinating to see what Greg Berhalter thinks is the best hand that he could. It would have been Josie Altidore, right? Mm-hmm. Definitely would have been Josie Altidore if fit. And now we'll see: is it Zardes or is it Sargent?
Yep.
We hope it's Sargent because we might as well just continue Josh Sargent's learning curve.
Yeah.
Right. But it's not going to be a massive surprise if it's Jassy, is it?
It will not, and then especially because of the knock that Sargent picked up. Berhalter talked about the injury to Paul Arriola, who came on and then we thought was maybe going to play 2 minutes and have to be subbed out.
Yeah.
He apparently has stud marks near both knees, so that tells you about some of the tackling from Cuba. But I think maybe that injury, it was, I forget who it was who pointed threw out this idea that like Berhalter might be a little bit pleased that Sargent picked up that knock, so it gives him the opportunity to start Zardes without
that is
having
some
to play
cynical thinking.
Yeah.
cynical thinking. All right, Justin King asks, what patterns of play did we see repeated in this match?
Yeah.
What aspects of the emerging style of play seem to be working versus evolving versus possibly discarded?
Sure. I mean,
we've already talked about one, right, with Morris going down the right and McKennie arriving late.
Mm-hmm. And then the Reggie Cannon getting forward, not aggressively, not bombing forward, but definitely moving forward a little bit sneakily at times, staying wide and creating a lot of width there.
Yeah, it's Cannon on one touchline, Pulisic on the other touchline, and then Jordan Morris can sort of drift in field and get in behind.
Yeah, so I mean that's definitely one. Another one that I felt like I saw, I don't know if this counts as a pattern of play, but the movement and availability of Jackson Ewell was something that stood out to me. That he seemed to have been tasked with, play laterally if you want to, drop it back if you need to, but definitely seemed to have been charged with, again, we're playing Cuba, they're going to be a bit more defensive, they're not going to be as technically strong, so go at them and cause problems. And it did seem like Jackson Ewell was more inclined to turn with the ball and go at Cuban players, or turn and try to play it at least diagonally forward. Like just sort of let the ball roll through his legs as an example, turn and dribble at the Cuban defense 5 yards and then play the ball. As opposed to
put your foot on it and look around.
Yeah, or taking a touch, turning, taking another touch, turning, then facing the Cuban goal, now taking a touch forward, then putting your foot on it.
So it's you made a fast decision and went straight forward.
Yeah. And I think that we both noticed that he sort of has that constant little touches and little steps while he's on the ball. It's not big steps, it's not big strides, it's not putting his foot on top. He seems to be constantly adjusting his position, his body shape, and where he is in relation to the ball to be able to play the ball at any given moment, and ideally play that ball forward at the same time.
And then another pattern we definitely saw was Jackson Ewell hitting those diagonals.
Yeah.
Right? We talked in the preview about how Cuba would shuffle and overload one side.
Yes.
Would leave one of the wings open. Ewell constantly found a big switch, or even sometimes just a chipped ball over the top.
Yep.
And he was almost always into space for someone to run onto. They were very accurate, but also very dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was. I think 2 goals come from it. Have you already said that?
I haven't said that.
Pretty sure 2 goals come from really nice diagonal balls from Jackson Ewell. It's worth noting we saw a couple different players trying to hit those. Reggie Cannon had a really nice one in the second half that almost came off. Matt Miazga, Tim Ream both had some of those as well. So it definitely seemed like the United States had prioritized, if they're going long diagonally, and it also seemed like that was with an eye towards getting Jordan Morris, who was making some very smart runs in behind. The United States offside 5 or 6 times, I would say, in the first half. Maybe that's high, but that seemed about right.
But also Cuba's offside line was not
raggedy,
not reliable, right? So it's definitely worth trying to push it all the time, because it would often be someone who was breaking it.
Yeah. And then I think this counts as a pattern of play in that I didn't see it happen a lot, but I would see if one of the center backs, and occasionally Jackson Ewell, would have the ball centrally and would kind of stride forward a little bit with it, Josh Sargent would sort of drop in. It wasn't an aggressive check away, check two, but it would be sort of slowly moving towards the ball, kind of gesturing to his feet. But it never felt like he was actually saying, "Play me the ball." It was almost like
a decoy?
It was really about as telegraphed to me, "I am a decoy. You can play me the ball." But then he would instantly spin off as soon as that ball was played diagonally. Yeah. And I think that was maybe another element of show to pull a center back out and see if there's any space created behind, and if not, then you can peel off once that ball goes wide.
Yeah, because it's also probably, as well as we talked about being a sacrifice, maybe because then Jordan Morris would make the run in behind. Mm-hmm. But it could also be about Josh Sargent being able to make a late arriving run right? Like you go deep so that you can spring back and get yourself back in the box, like after the ball's gone wide to Morris or Cannon or someone like that.
That checks out.
Yeah, that does check out. Okay, Mark Mickelson asks, what would a loss on Tuesday mean?
That we lost?
It would mean that we lost. It would mean that any positive vibes from the Cuba game would be forgotten. And then it would also mean that we would definitely need to beat Canada in the home game in Orlando. And we'd need to run up the score on Cuba again to get the goal difference.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be...
Why are we talking about it? It's not going to happen.
What do you mean?
I'm just hoping it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an element of like being prepared and being ready for a possible result. But at the same time, it hasn't happened. It's better to just sort of get your head in the right mindset for that game. For their part, the players kind of uniformly said we have not really thought about Canada. We have been solely focused on Cuba.
Yeah.
That said, that does feel like a thing they have to say.
Yep.
Because otherwise, if you lose, then it's, oh, you overprepared or you underprepared or what have you. But I think if we lose to Canada, it means that Canada have improved and gotten much stronger, and I think that is the case. And then it means, the United States maybe took the foot off the gas a little bit, maybe weren't as sharp. We didn't see as many of the patterns of play as we saw against Cuba, but that's all hypothetical. If that happens, then it could be disastrous. If we lose 4-0 to Canada, then it means that things have gone horribly wrong. But it also mean that they bunkered and sat in and hit the United States on the break, and then the U.S. tried to find their way through but was unsuccessful, and they lost 1-0. You could have any number of things, and it doesn't necessarily mean the sky is falling, but it also doesn't necessarily not mean that the sky is falling.
All right. Exit 138. We've got a great question coming up about Weston McKennie and the position he played tonight. But first, today's show is sponsored by Manscaped.
You got very excited about it.
Because I've just realised we're doing it blind, we're doing it without the copy.
That is true.
But we've done the Manscaped ad read several times.
We have.
I think we can pull it off.
All right, so for people who are new, who've just found us and they're wondering what is this Manscaped thing, as I try to avoid getting hit by a truck hauling what appears to be a horse, Daryl, what is Manscaped?
It's the correct tools for your family jewels. If you want to trim down there below the belt and keep things tidy, manscaped.com is the website you need to visit, and you need to get yourself the Lawnmower 2.0. Twice as good as the Lawnmower 1.0.
Yes, twice as good, and that means it's double the gentlemanly trimming. And I say gentlemanly to work in the fact that the person behind me, who is hauling the horse, is driving with their brights on, which is not gentlemanly, Daryl.
Not gentlemanly at all. They are not a Manscaped customer.
No, they are not. But a Manscaped customer is gentlemanly because they're keeping things, trimmed up down there. You can't let things get out of control.
And cringe if you need to, but Manscaped with the Lawnmower 2.0, make sure that there are no nicks, no cuts. It has technology that prevents you from doing any damage down there, so you can do it safely and securely, which isn't the case with other trimmers.
No, it's not, and we're going to prove it right now. I am driving, so I can't do it, but Daryl, you're going to put it to the test as we drive in the darkness, right?
I mean, I could lie and pretend that I just
Also, please don't do that, because that hair will get everywhere.
So if you want to get 20% off plus free shipping, go to manscaped.com and use the discount code TSS.
That is correct, my friend.
I'm pretty confident that is correct.
I think
Manscaped.com, 20% off plus free shipping when you use the discount code TSS. Thank you to Manscaped for sponsoring this episode of the Total Soccer Show.
I concur.
You concur.
Yes, sir.
All right. Up next, from Half Spaces, which I believe is Ben Harold. It's that McKennie question I talked about. Ben says, or Half Spaces says, McKennie looks like he might be the new left-sided 8/10. Who is the number one option for the spot on the right side if that's the case? Could it be Morales, Pomykal, or Adams? Before you answer, Sally, can we talk a little about McKennie being the left-sided 8/10? Because people might not know what we're talking about.
Right. I mean, so what we've seen from the United States in their usual shape has been... Like, how would you classify it? Would you say 4-3-3? Would you go...
Yeah, you can put it on paper as a 4-3-3.
Yeah, okay.
With there's a defensive midfielder who is often Michael Bradley-Wiltshire, but was Jackson Newell tonight. And then you have, like, a left-sided attacking midfielder, which is usually Christian Pulisic, who is farther forward. And then you have a right-sided central midfielder who sort of sometimes sits alongside the defensive midfielder and then sometimes gets forward, but isn't quite as attacking as the left-sided number 10.
Right. And what we've seen, as you said, is what has been sort of the norm when the U.S. is at full strength is Christian Pulisic playing as that number 10, the kind of left-sided central midfielder, and then Weston McKennie playing as the number 8, slightly more to the right.
Yeah.
Tonight, with Christian Pulisic lining up on the far left wing, that allowed Weston McKennie to start as that kind of left central midfielder. And I thought it looked very, very good.
It was incredible.
I thought of all of the players tonight, Weston McKennie, not just because of the hat trick, but because of how often he was able to find space and then what he was able to do with that.
Yeah.
The kind of varied approach to this game from him, that sometimes it was turn and dribble at the Cuban defenders, sometimes it was lay it off simply, sometimes it was just a very clever little disguised flick, sometimes there was a move in there.
It was a late run, Frank Lampard-ish late run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so it seemed like he did a very nice job of finding space, but never being too predictable and never being like, oh, these guys suck, so I can do whatever I want. He sort of continued to do a lot of varied things that never let Cuba get comfortable.
Including that, I don't know if it goes down as an assist because it goes down as an own goal.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Jordan Morris strike saved by the keeper, then it goes in, so it goes down as an own goal for, I believe, Morales. But there's that great, it's a ball into Weston McKennie, and he just checks his shoulder and then uses, it's like a reverse flick in behind him for Morris to run onto.
Yeah, and
to me, it's the most exciting moment of the game, the most highlight showboaty kind of moment of the game.
Yeah, I mentioned this on Twitter. Iva Skalarsep asked Weston McKennie about the kind of why he and Morris were able to look so kind of connected, why they seem to be so in sync. McKennie paused for a half second and then said, Fortnite, probably. And then instead of providing more serious answers, said no, we play a lot of Fortnite in our downtime. And I think basically they've created a pretty good bond. I'm going to assume they've also played together a lot in practice, but you could see that sort of I'm guessing you're going to be making that run in behind again, so I would just go for this little redirected flick, and that is exactly what happened, and that is exactly what was happening for Jordan Morris. So that relationship was solid.
And again, I know it's only Cuba, but this is progress, because you remember the days early on, I think it was Jordan Morris was on the right wing and McKennie was right centre mid.
Yep.
And they were confused about when they were supposed to be.
Yeah, we saw them having to talk. No, you go, I go. It was a
and then
out of the Roxbury
they
situation.
both went over and talked to Berhalter about what they were supposed to be doing.
That's right.
So you see moments of confusion like that earlier in the year, and then you see tonight where it's I want to say no look pass because he did check his shoulder, but almost telepathic passes.
Yeah. It was enjoyable. So now we go to the original question, which was?
Yeah, so if McKennie, and I think there's an argument for playing McKennie in that left-sided number 10 role, especially if you're going to have Christian Pulisic on the wide left, not the wide left, then that opens up a spot at right centre mid.
Stupid spell check.
Opens up a spot at right centre mid. Christian Roldan filled it tonight. I think Tyler Adams, that might be a shout to put him there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, obviously we won't know that until we see Tyler Adams in camp. We also asked Berhalter about the decision to play Pulisic wide, because I think that is worth mentioning here. And the gist I got from that one, Daryl, you correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't have my notes in front of me, nor have I listened back to the audio, was essentially that we think Christian can do a lot of different things, and we're not sure what he does best for this team yet.
Yeah, that's pretty much the answer.
So we're still trying to figure things out. So I only mention that just to say that there's also a decent chance that against Canada, if they go with a roughly similar lineup, we still end up seeing Weston McKennie move back to that number 8 spot. Pulisic moves central. So that is,
I get that feeling.
That is a decent possibility.
It depends how big those marks are on Ariola's leg.
Yes, exactly. But if we don't see that, and it's worth noting here that McKennie and Jordan Morris came out at halftime, so it stands to reason that we will see both of them for the Canada game. Again, we don't know exactly where. If it's not going to be Weston McKennie, who I thought was the best performer on the evening, or if it is going to be him at that left central midfield spot, then in terms of the right spot, it's probably Tyler Adams. Christian Roldan didn't look like he looked fine to me tonight. I didn't see anything particularly spectacular. I didn't see anything particularly horrific.
He mostly just moved the ball nicely. Yeah. Right? There's a lot of he didn't make runs into the box. He kind of held position, which might be part of the role. Yeah. Right. He held position, didn't get in the box, and would often just receive it and play it wide to Reggie Cannon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So he did his job. He did fine. In terms of other names we might be able to see aside from Tyler Adams, I think that's a solid shout. Would be maybe Dwayne Octavius Holmes. I think Dwayne Holmes could do that number 8 job.
The problem is on the teleconference after the roster announcement. I think wasn't it made clear?
He sees him as the number 10.
Sees him as a number 10. Yeah. Right? So we just piled up with players for that number 10 role now. There's Pulisic, Leggett plays there. Now McKennie can play there. Dwayne Holmes is maybe 4th, 5th, 6th choice there. So
maybe that's where he just needs to remind Greg Berhalter that he's capable of wearing the number 8.
Yes.
Holmes. And then Alfredo Morales.
He should ask Darby if he can change his number.
Yeah, just do that. That'll work out. And then Alfredo Morales, I think we saw him we weren't sure where he would be utilized. We're not sure if he'll be utilized again. He is still recovering from injury, but he also seems like he can kind of do that box-to-box, charging around, putting out problems, but also seems more than capable with the ball at his feet.
Paxton Pomacale's a good shout, but I think maybe not in the short term. That might be next year or the year after type thing, because again, Pomacale is going to be U23s. Yeah. He wasn't called up for the senior national team this time. He was obviously, the call up in September was kind of just hey, come and get a taste of the action.
Exactly. Similar to like Brendan Aronson and Miles Robinson before him.
Yes. Okay.
Or I guess after him in Brendan Aronson's case.
Chris McGuffin asks, do you think Weston McKennie could end up being a secret weapon for the US moving forward in regards to goal scoring? He always seems to be in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, I'm not even sure he's a secret weapon. I think he's just a straight-up weapon because, I mean, he talked about that, like, he has always felt like his ability to arrive late and know where to be is a critical asset to his game. Berhalter's talked about that as well. And not only do we see that when he scored the goals, but even in moments of, like corner kicks when they would spill loose, 2 different times in 2 different, locations, the ball fell to Weston McKennie, and he had adjusted a little bit to make that happen. And I think he's very, very good at reading a developing play and knowing how to respond to it without just, running towards the ball or without just crashing the near post. Yeah. He seems to think, he seems to be very capable of evaluating a fluid attacking maneuver and seeing, that center back's drifting there, that left back's going there, I can slide in right there and find that space. And I think with that in mind, I see him as just a legitimate attacking option, albeit from a more delayed, deeper position.
Yes. All right, Mr. Stuffin' Things. With tonight's performance, even though it is Cuba, does Berhalter dare take out Ewell and Sargent out of the lineup? Take Ewell and Sargent out of the lineup. I'm going to say it's not the sort of thing Berhalter would be worried about.
No.
If he wanted to take them out of the lineup, he's not going to be worried that they had a good game against Cuba.
No, I mean...
And I'm pretty confident Jackson Ewell will be replaced by Michael Bradley when we play Canada.
I would agree with that, and I do think we'll see Zardes over Sargent, maybe because of the injury, maybe because that was always kind of the plan, but I wouldn't be surprised by that either. And honestly, no, I'd be disappointed, because I wouldn't mind seeing, now that we've kind of seen what Sargent is capable of and good at and needs to work on, I wouldn't mind contrasting that one more time with Gyasi Zardes. Again, I would much rather see Josie Altidore, and I would much rather contrast Josh Sargent with Josie Altidore, but the roster being what it is, I think we probably end up seeing Gyasi Zardes in that Canada game.
And I think the plan was probably always Ewell and Sargent were going to start the Cuba game, and then Bradley and Altidore were going to start the Canada game.
Yes.
Right? And the Altidore injury has thrown it all up in the air, and that's why now there's the question of Sargent or Zardes.
Exactly, yes. I would say, I think we do have a question about this. I've skimmed them very, very briefly. I do think if you're looking for a reason for optimism about the U.S.'s midfield and what that midfield might look like going forward, if it were Will Trapp still as the deputy to Michael Bradley, I think Will Trapp plays this game. That he wasn't even on the matchday squad says to me, at least, maybe this is wishful thinking, maybe this is hopeful thinking, that right now Bradley is that number 6, and if we're looking for someone to come in and play, if Bradley can't go or is injured or what have you, I think right now it is Jackson Ewell. I think he has probably moved up the depth chart.
I'm going to skip forward, and Bino asks, how happy is Taylor knowing Ewell just passed Trapp in the central defensive midfielder pecking order?
So, all right, here's my honest answer. I am excited. I don't know Jackson Ewell well enough, is the thing. I do not watch enough San Jose. I'll be the first to admit that. And therefore, I would not say that, he's a player that I've watched a bunch of footage of and confidently can say, yes, he can do this all the time. He's very good at this. He can do this, he can do that, he can do this. He should always be playing. He should always be second choice.
But I think seeing him against Uruguay and Cuba, both the nations of Alexis Guerrero's ethnicities.
In your face, Alexis.
No coincidence. I think you can get a good feel for his game from those two matches.
Yeah, and I think I've enjoyed pretty much everything I saw from him. Maybe there's a few errant passes here and there. Maybe there's a few
That's because his passes
decisions.
Are brave.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I like about him. He takes risks.
Yeah.
He who dares. He who dares, Jackson Ewell. Anything else to say?
So the answer is very happy, I guess, because I thought he, again, just the little steps, the little adjustments, the playing the ball forward but playing the ball diagonally and hitting those pretty much perfectly every single time, and just sort of roaming around, being an option for the center backs, doing his defensive job. I thought it was a pretty comprehensive performance, again, for the 40th time in this episode, albeit against Cuba.
Shane asks, is it fair to judge the players that came on in the second half despite the US being in cruise control at that point? So players who came in the second half, Areola and Boyd at half-time, both played on the wing. And who came on later?
Sebastian Lletget.
Sebastian Lletget came on for Christian Pulisic in about the 66th minute.
Yeah.
So is it fair to judge them despite the US being in cruise control?
Why don't you answer that one? Because I would like to hear what you have to say
think
first.
yes. I think part of the US looking like they're in cruise control is because of the downgrade in player.
Yeah. Okay. I think I agree with that one. Can you read the question one more time?
Is it fair to judge the players that came on in the second half despite the US being in cruise control at that point?
Maybe I'm just tired because I think I'm misreading and overanalyzing that question. I mean, yes, they're players that came onto the field. It doesn't really matter what the scoreline was. You're expected to have an impact. You're expected to be able to do the role that the person before you was capable of doing or was doing.
Yeah.
And I don't think that those three substitutions really covered themselves in glory very much. Paul Arriola got a couple whacks here and there. He had a couple nice little darting runs that we've come to expect from him, but nothing too lights out. Tyler Boyd left me with still more questions than I have answers. His crossing was not. It was about what we thought it would be, which is to say, not as good. He was okay in some of the one-on-ones, but it seemed like the ball popped up on a couple of his first touches. So I don't think he came into that game maybe quite as sharp as I would have liked to see.
I think also he looks bad in comparison to the way Jordan Morris created space for himself to run into. The thing is, it's probably 30 minutes ago at this point, so I'm mentioning again.
Oh yeah, mile marker 1:10.
The thing where it's 40 miles ago at this point. The thing where Morris would fake a run.
It would be 105 if you would go faster, guy in the left lane. Sorry, go ahead, Daryl.
Yeah, PJR 3313.
Yeah.
The way that Morris would make a run in one direction and then cut in the other direction to run in behind, so he would trick the fullback and give himself a couple yards head start. We did not see Tyler Boyd create that space for himself in the same way.
No, we did not.
So that's, to me, that's the massive. What's the word? The big negative in terms of the Tyler Boyd versus Jordan Morris comparison is that Boyd doesn't seem able to do that, because then there's no ball that Reggie Cannon can play in behind for him to run onto if you're not creating the space for yourself to run into.
Actually, with that in mind, I would say really the only negatives I think I have coming out of this game are the performances of the three substitutes, because Arriola is a person that have come to expect to be scrappy, but be technical, but be threatening, and I don't think we saw as much of that from him. Tyler Boyd, you've already mentioned, and then Lletget is a player that I really enjoy seeing. I think he has looked good as that number 10, that left-sided number 10. Tonight, he just looked not up for it. I don't know if that's because the energy had died by the time he came on.
Yeah, I think that is it.
Yeah,
I think he has the best excuse out of the three of them, because the first two came on at half time, and Lletget comes on later when the thing had already started to die down.
Yeah, that could be, but even then he still had shooting opportunities from the top of the box that he put wide or didn't take cleanly. He had some misplaced passes. He had some heavy touches. I think that's probably one of the worst performances, if not the worst performance I've seen from Sebastian Lletget in a U.S. national team jersey. Yeah. I would add that a big part of that is because he routinely looks very good in a U.S. jersey, so when he has a bad performance, it stands out that much more.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's fair. All right, USMNT, with the final T, TEA, spell for T.
I see.
Could we get an update on Pulisic's wife?
So, yeah, if people aren't on Twitter, I was very excited to tweet out that Pulisic was starting wide left, that Weston McKennie was left center, and then that Josh Sargent was up top. I am blaming my autocorrect because when I went to correct the tweet, it still tried to correct it to wife and not wide, but my initial tweet was Pulisic wife left.
Pulisic's wife left.
Pulisic, it wasn't apostrophe S, thankfully. It was just Pulisic wife left, I think. But still, that led to some genuine concern of I didn't even know he had a wife, and now she's left him, oh no. And then a lot of other jokes at my expense, which I can handle, because they're deserved. That's why you gotta proofread, baby.
MVP of the jokes, Nipun.
Yes. Well done, Nipun Chopra. Thanks, Nipun.
WOSS, W-O-S-S, says, MLS put out a poll about who should be the starting number 6, and McKennie won. Do you agree with the result?
Not anymore.
I'm the same. I've been on the show talking about how I would like to see McKennie tried at that number 6 role. The number 6 can't make those late arrival runs because you've got a responsibility to sort of stay back and hold the midfield. I am now convinced that McKennie is much more effective as an attacking creative force.
And yes, and it's that attacking creativity. Like, I don't want to, for lack of a better way of putting it, like, shackle him. That if you put him at number 6, he has to be more steady. He has to sit deeper. He can't get as involved. But that isn't just meaning involved in the attack. Like, we saw him pulled out from a corner kick to have a word with the ref because he was scrapping with a Cuban defender. From the very beginning. He was shoving Cuban defenders around.
He was being hugged on every corner.
Yeah.
He was being bear hugged on every corner.
But, like, I want him to have that freedom to go charging at people, to knock people off the ball, to be able to pick up a yellow card, but also be able to drive and score a goal or arrive late. And I think if you're that number 6, you can't do that because you have to be... Like, it has to be guaranteed that you're going to be there the whole game. You're not going to pick up needless cards. You're not going to cause problems. You're not going to concede fouls. And I kind of like a little bit of, like, recklessness to Weston McKennie in the U.S. national team. I don't mean that in, like, a dangerous way. I just mean I want him to be able to
license is a better word.
Yeah, license to roam and maybe kill. I'm fine with that.
Brian H. asks, does Pulisic's penalty placement show a lack of confidence or an abundance of confidence?
An abundance of confidence.
Why so?
Because I think, like, he wanted the goal. I think that much is clear to me, and I think he wanted to establish that he can take it and do just fine with it. But just hitting it top of the goal as hard as he could. Maybe they've watched some footage of it. Maybe they knew the keeper would dive, or he wasn't going to be that strong. But to me, it's Pulisic just picking a spot and hitting it and backing himself to put it in, and that's what he did.
Fair enough.
What do you think?
I actually didn't see it. This is the one goal I didn't see. So I'm going to say yes, abundance of confidence.
Yeah, all right.
Nihal Kata asks, who should be our designated penalty taker going forward?
That's tough. Do you have an answer for that one while I think about it?
I'm going to say Christian Pulisic.
Yeah, I think the only thing...
Having not seen his penalty tonight, I'm going to say Pulisic.
The only reason why... Like, it's not a penalty thing. It's just that some of his set pieces left me wanting. I didn't think his delivery on corners was very good. He's not a great
corner kick taker, is he?
No, but then I look at other people who are capable of taking set pieces for us or penalties for us, and I don't see anybody else who's really jumping off the page as an obvious candidate. So I think it is Christian Pulisic until somebody comes along and proves that they can do it better, more consistently.
All right, I've momentarily lost the page of questions.
It's fine. I can update by saying that we're now at the Caroline County Tourist Information Center, mile marker 104. We're getting closer to Richmond, but we still got a ways to go, which means we still have time for many more questions. I'm assuming there's at least a couple more.
You want me to get... we've updated with 20 plus since I've opened this as well.
Let's keep it rolling.
Okay, so Bino, we've already had a question from him, but he's also asking, is centre-back Tim Ream's spot to lose?
Yeah, probably. Actually, no, probably not. It's his spot, provided that John Brooks isn't healthy. I think if John Brooks is healthy, it's probably still him ahead of Tim Ream, but I don't think Tim Ream put a foot wrong this evening, not that I recall. I think, so maybe it's his, but I still think John Brooks would have been in the squad, probably would have started at least this game, or at least one of these two games.
I have a slightly different take, which is a starting spot is Tim Ream's to lose.
Yes.
But sometimes he's going to be left centre-back.
Yeah.
And sometimes he's going to replace Daniel Lovitz and be the left back.
Yep.
Like, I wouldn't even be surprised if against Canada, the centre backs are Miazga and Aaron Long comes back in, and Tim Ream goes over to left back.
Yep, that makes sense to me.
So, but a starting spot is Tim Ream to lose, and I'm in favour of it. I think he has performed admirably, calmly, every time he's worn a US national team jersey over the last few games.
I was about to get very excited about the Ream-Miazga partnership, and that is one where I'm going to put that one on hold, on pause, and say, it was Cuba. Let's see how they do against stronger opponents before I get too excited.
And there's also a slight lack of pace in that partnership, and that's why I think you'll see Aaron Long come in against Canada.
Speaking of Aaron Long, I do know what you're saying. I want to throw this out. I don't know why. I thought Aaron Long was, like, not necessarily short, but, like, not the tall. He's taller than, like, some of the goalkeepers on the U.S. roster.
How do you think the family got the name?
He's a big fella. What, long instead of tall?
Yeah.
All right.
I'm saying they're not called the short family.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Move it along. Moving along.
Oh, actually, more on centre-backs. How did Miazga... Garrett Craig asks, how did Miazga rate in your eyes? Ream had at least a couple line-breaking passes that I liked. Don't remember much actively positive from Matt Miazga.
So, I will start with this one, and then I'll throw it to you, because Daryl noticed some things that I think were pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I really only enjoyed what I saw from Matt Miazga. I thought he was primarily the one tasked with winning every single long ball when Cuba were either taking goal kicks, when the keeper was kicking it long, or more often than not when they were trying to, like, like the Cuba would come out, catch a cross from the United States attack, and then try to launch it long to launch a counterattack. Matt Miazga seemed to be the one who covered the distance to win every header, to put a body on a defender. He had one where the defender was like really backing up into him to try to force him backwards. And excuse me. And Miazga reached around the Cuban attacker with his foot to win the ball.
Yeah.
So I felt like his presence there and his ability to win those balls was exceptional. But then, Daryl, you pointed out that there were some moments that still made you think a little bit like, but maybe under pressure, less solid.
There were a few, basically, clearances that he got to. He always got there. Always got there, which is the first job. But then the clearance would be a little wayward.
Yeah.
Like, there was one that Brad Gazan had to go and chase to stop it going out for a corner kick. There were a couple where Miazga got there but popped it straight up in the air. There's one that he got to and played directly to a Cuban player, and I think Tim Ream had to bail him out.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of just sometimes he'll meet a ball and won't get a good connection with it.
Yeah, and this is one, again, I'm gonna withhold judgment because it's Cuba, but in a different way this time. Because I think you've probably experienced this as a center back. When you're playing for a team that's up 6-0 on what is clearly an inferior opponent, it can be really hard to stay locked in and dialed in. Guzan talked about this. He talked about talking to Miazga about this, who then talked to the rest of the team about, hey, we got to step it up a little bit. We're getting a little lackadaisical. And I think if you're used to just a long ball over the top, I'll deal with it, then maybe every now and then you might think oh, sure, I'll go for this pass. Why not? And then it might not come off.
All right, so next question from Andrew. I feel like we've already answered this, but we'll do the formality. Andrew asks, is Jordan Morris ahead of Tyler Boyd right now?
Yes.
Very much so, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The fact that Morris was taken off at half-time means, rest up for a little bit because you're starting against Canada.
I can't believe how positive I am on Jordan Morris right now. Again, not just because of the performance against Cuba, but from everything we've seen from him lately, even in the Mexico game.
For Seattle as well.
Yeah, for Seattle. But even in the Mexico game, he was kind of one of the lone bright spots in terms of players who came on and tried to make something happen. And I think that's what he does. He tries stuff for the United States. He also seems to be a good chemistry guy, a good glue guy, and he seems to be very good at those runs in behind the defense, so much so that his teammates, multiple teammates reference being able to kind of target that and bank on him making those runs. So, yes, I think right now he is definitely head and shoulders above Tyler Boyd in terms of that starting spot.
And Matt Miazga's head and shoulders above everybody.
That is also true. Especially Diego Lainez. I beat you to
Cuban
it.
attackers. Another question from Bino, which I actually think is somewhat related to the Jordan Morris answer we just gave. Bino says, Reggie Cannon's in such good form. Where does Yedlin fit when healthy? And I would argue that Cannon's relationship with Jordan Morris means that Cannon has the starting spot right now and will start against Canada.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. I would also not be surprised if DeAndre Yedlin starts because maybe Berhalter wants to get a look at him. We talked about this in the preview that he's only had him in for maybe one camp. Berhalter's only had Yedlin in for maybe one camp, I think. So maybe he wants to give him
the March friendlies.
That could be. But maybe he wants to give him looks in a competitive match. I asked Cannon about if he had any concerns that there's now seemingly 1,000 right backs for him to compete against, and he basically said no. He went specifically to DeAndre Yedlin when talking about them and mentioned, I didn't know this, that essentially DeAndre Yedlin was the player that took Reggie Cannon under his wing, that made him feel comfortable with the national team, that kind of brought him into it. And so for him it was more like, I'm competing against my friend, so it's all good and I'm excited for it and it makes me play better. So I don't know if he'll be the starter because I think Berhalter is still changing things out and figuring things out. And I would also add from some of his comments, I think it's an important clarification that I don't think Berhalter thinks about things in terms of a depth chart. I don't think it's, here's my right back number 1, here's my right back number 2, and that's how it's going to be until it changes. I think it is really, really dependent on what those players need to do in that moment, which is, again, where I go to the system being so important and why I have hope that the system kind of clicks, because then if it's, we need a right back who's going to bomb forward every single time, maybe that's Yedlin. We need a right back who can bomb forward, can also play long diagonals.
I was going to say, they're kind of similar, Cannon and Yedlin, in terms of both pretty quick, both love to get forward.
I thought Cannon's distribution was better than I remember DeAndre Yedlin's being, but that may also be because I've not seen DeAndre Yedlin in a national team jersey and in a Newcastle jersey to some extent in a while.
All right, next question.
Yeah.
DGB asks, did Roldan do anything at all? I didn't even realise he was out there as late as the second half. Did I simply miss something from him? We've kind of addressed this, and that his role was just to receive and then give it wide. Receive and then give it wide.
Yeah, I mean, I think he had a Berhalter game. He was in there because he was going to be able to do what Berhalter wanted him to do. I think he is one of the group. I think he's going to get opportunities going forward and will consistently get them. What he does with them will probably be something like we saw against Cuba, which is kind of fulfill his role. Nothing too flashy, but nothing too bad either.
Next question. Kevin Chan. Kevin Chan asks, Berhalter has mentioned in a few interviews that he likes to layer on more advanced concepts each camp, to have each camp build on another. Does that mean we'll reach a tipping point where it'll be damn hard for a new guy to break in because someone like Zardes simply has had more camps and the new guy hasn't had all of those previous experiences? This goes to the...
That question did not go where I thought it was going to go. I thought I would have an easy answer. I did not.
Do you remember us talking about how Berhalter keeps referring to the group? The group is progressing, The group is doing this. And we were a little concerned about the same thing where if you're not part of the group, you haven't been taking in all this information and you're not part of the process, and it'll be hard for you to break in.
Yeah.
I think someone like Dwayne Holmes is a victim of this.
Yeah, I think so.
I think Holmes and Roldan are maybe Roldan's part of the group.
Yeah. And that one might be because there's a lot of midfield options, and so we're talking about, the reserve number 8. They're maybe it's less.
For us, the reserve number 8. For Berhalter, the fourth choice number 10.
Yeah, that could be. But I think when it comes to certain positions like striker, I think that is where you may see a bit more experimentation. You may see new players given opportunities, and
we're seeing it with Sargent, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and I think there'll be more to come because I think Greg Berhalter would probably, amongst friends, would probably admit that Gyasi Zardes is not the caliber of striker that he's necessarily wanting for the team, but it is the person who can do what's asked of him.
Who would you say that with? If he's sitting with Josh Wolf and a glass of wine?
Probably not. Maybe his brother. Talk to Jay Berhalter about it. So I think that's one where, and I say that just to say that. So if you have another if Sebastian Soto comes in and does a few things that Berhalter asks of him, I think that's what it will be. It's sort of okay, you've done what I've asked of you. I'm going to call you in next time. We'll see if you keep doing it, and it will probably be slow progression. Aside from if Andrea Novakovic tears up Serie B and next season tears up Serie A, and then suddenly is a lights out player. I mean, he could start by scoring at least one goal for Frosinone. That would be good. I was trying to think of any forward option that I could think of.
Matt Castle. Do you believe Jordan Morris's quote that he hasn't worked on his left foot?
So it's interesting. I asked that because I am not a Seattle fan. I don't go to Seattle games. I have not been around Jordan Morris, so I was curious. It sounds like if you're a Seattle fan, you were annoyed by that question from me because it's a thing he's, I guess, been working on all season, that he has improved, and that it's almost now a skill set that he is more than capable of utilizing. I think he probably hasn't been out there just using his left foot, but I think the truth, as always, is somewhere in the middle. And my guess would be that somebody somewhere has said to him, "Look, man, you gotta improve that left foot if you want to be able to excel at that next level." And to be honest, I think it's a big reason why he's been playing better, is that he can now play with his left foot. I want to emphasize this: we play against people who only use their right foot, and it is so much easier to defend that player when you know they're always going to want to be on their right foot or their left foot. Whichever foot is more dominant, you can defend. You can basically just
we both know who you were talking about.
What you mean from our league? Yeah, I know. I'm not sure we do. See what I did there? But that joke will get 3 people laughing. But so it's really, really easy because you can just say sure, go. I'm going to leave your entire weak side open, and I'm only going to defend your strong side. Yeah. And a lot of times, attackers will still try to get that dominant foot shot off. That Morris can now strike equally well with, or maybe not equally well, but very well with his left foot. Can play deadly crosses in. I think he's definitely improved, and I think that probably is at least a little bit of focused work, and I think it makes him that much better of a player.
So where's this quote come from? Where has Morris said? I haven't been. Oh, this is the quote you got from him.
Yeah.
Okay, so you asked him and he said what? No?
He said to be honest, no, it's not something that I've worked on or focused on that much. And then I asked him, so does that mean we'll still see some Trivellas? And he said, oh for sure.
Skangles asked, should Pulisic continue taking corner kicks for the US? Is there another player who would be better served taking our corners?
That's tough. I think
because my answer is no, because they're not very good. But then I don't know who the replacement answer.
That's the thing. maybe Tyler Adams when he comes back. We shall see.
You think of Tyler Adams as a corner kick taker?
Yeah, why not? I don't know.
You have never seen Tyler Adams take a corner kick.
No, but that doesn't mean I don't think he could be good at it. I mean, I think he is equally capable of playing in good crosses and deadly through balls. So yeah, why not give him a go? But I think the actual answer is just that Berhalter is probably going to stick with Pulisic because it's the player that seems the best candidate to take it, and you give them more repetition, you work on those set pieces a little bit more, you get some master set piece theater and some design corners, and maybe he starts to look a little bit sharper.
But it's a flaw in the US game, right, if we don't have dangerous corners.
Yeah.
As Alexia says, set pieces, set pieces, set pieces.
Yeah, I mean, have we ever had, like, I know everybody would immediately scream Clint Dempsey at me, but have we ever had an attacking option who we thought 1 out of every 3 free kicks from 25 yards out, he's going to at least put on frame, if not score? Like, it's not a thing that the United States has ever been particularly good at, and it would be really nice to have somebody who's just solid on set pieces. So I wouldn't mind sticking with Christian Pulisic if it means that more reputation builds more experience, builds more solidity, I guess is the word I'll go with there.
All right, Jacob asks...
Mile marker 89.
All right, people seem ready to fully dismiss this competition after this one result.
Yeah.
How can you sell the competition as useful to a nation? The competition being the CONCACAF Nations League. Could you sell it as experience playing on the road in CONCACAF, meaningful games for fringe first-team players, or opportunities for smaller nations?
I mean, all of those things, but one big one that I had not considered, John Strong made this point on the broadcast very early on, is that essentially by having these help with, like, coefficient rankings, but also in terms of putting, like, top teams into the next level of competition, it effectively removes that the kind of play-in rounds of World Cup qualifying when the United States would be playing a team like Cuba anyway, or plays Bahamas or Barbados or whomever, who we're probably going to beat pretty badly anyway. You sort of get those games out of the way by playing them here, and I think that's good in terms of you still have those games, but they're meaningful games where you can cap-tie people, but it's less of a, like, okay, well, sorry, Cuba, your World Cup qualification campaign is done now.
Yeah.
Enjoy the next 3 years. Like, it keeps smaller teams' hopes alive, even if they're incredibly slight. It still gives them a thing to play for, and I would also say gives them a thing to play for long-term.
World Cup qualification, right?
Yeah, that too, certainly. But, I mean, like, long-term, I think if you start to embrace the idea, if you're Cuba, maybe that's a bad example, but if you are, say, Jamaica, who right now are, like, not in the top tier of teams in the Nations League.
Yeah, League B.
But you see it as, like, but if we continue to compete, there's more opportunities for us to get maybe a World Cup spot or to kind of improve our ranking. So, yeah, like, we can build towards something as opposed to, well, we're out, so we're out, and now we're going to sit around and play meaningless friendlies.
We're going to sit around for 2 years until we can try and do all this again.
Yeah, and then I also think that I am still not sold on it, but it's tough when your first game is against Cuba. I think the games against Canada are going to be really fascinating and really exciting, and that will probably make me a bit more inclined to be psyched about the Nations League. But then obviously as we go further along, inevitably, hopefully, playing Mexico again in a competitive match, you wouldn't get that outside of what the Gold Cup, the World Cup, or maybe happening to cross paths with them in the Copa America.
Yeah.
That's it. So,
and it's actually really important to play Mexico in a game with points on the line.
Exactly.
When you've got Greg Berhalter as your coach.
Oh.
Because we learned in the most recent Mexico friendly that he treats friendlies in a very sort of let's work on stuff kind of way instead of a let's try and win this game kind of way. So, but a game against Mexico where it actually matters, where you can get knocked out of a competition, is much more useful, or just much more enjoyable for us as fans to watch. Yeah.
You will get no arguments from me, my friend. You will get no arguments from me.
You will get no more questions from me because we have answered all the Twitter questions. Apologies if you didn't get your question asked. Some were repeats, right? They're literally the same question because they didn't know someone else had asked it.
Yeah.
And then there were a lot of like questions about like how much can we even take from this game because it's Cuba? And I think we've already addressed that, so I didn't ask any of those questions. And Jim Proshire, yes, Cuba did have 11 players. There we go. We answered that question for you. All right, Tyler, we've talked at length through many, many mile markers. Is there anything in this huge conversation that we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about in terms of USA-Cuba?
No, I don't think so. I think it was an enjoyable game. Lots of good goals. A fun time had by all.
A fun time had by all.
Except for Cuba.
Maybe not Cuba's fullbacks.
Probably not.
We will be back on Monday with a preview of USA v Canada. We've already watched a bit of Canada footage, and it's quite interesting, right? Like Jonathan David, Alphonso Davies, all that. They've got some interesting players. We'll watch even more and get a real good feel for Canada. Preview on Monday, then the game is Tuesday night, and we'll have a review for you late Tuesday night.
You're going down, Canada.
Taylor Rockwell.
Your Mounties and your Mooses will cry.
Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today and drive me home.
Right back at you, buddy, except for the driving part. And also the day part because it's 1 a.m.
Oh, dear. Listeners, thank you for listening. Let us know if you enjoyed this sort of carpool Total Soccer show.
Daryl, if you can continue to ramble for like 2 more minutes, you will see the Richmond skyline, and that's how good we've done.
Is that? Paramount?
I don't think you should do that. I think we should just celebrate the fact that we're almost near the Richmond skyline. But we should thank everybody for listening, and hopefully the audio is okay. Hopefully it recorded, because if not, I'm going to be real mad.
It's going to be my fault. I'm going to be in trouble. You're going to kick me out in the middle of 95.
That is probably true.
If you see me with my thumb out on the side of 95, you know things went wrong. All right, listeners, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you again on Monday. You gotta slice it.